You open this door with the key of reason. Beyond it is another dimension, a dimension of truth, a dimension of freedom, a dimension of joy. You're moving into the land of both the ideal and the real, of the possible and the actual. You've just crossed over into the Capitalist Corner.
Where reason meets reality, welcome to the Capitalist Corner.
Happy Friday, folks. One day away from celebrating our 250th year of independence. We are the Capitalist Corner. I am your host, Mark Pellegrino, and also the chairman of the American Capitalist Party, along with my co-host and vice chair of the American Capitalist Party, Michael Liebowitz. Michael, I have to remind everybody before we get into what's going on in the rational alternative, I just want to remind everybody that on September 19th and 20th, we will be having our national convention. According to our bylaws, it's what we have to do. Please go to AmericanCapitalistParty.org, register, and be a part of the change. If you haven't noticed lately, there's Democratic Socialists vying for seats in Michigan. They're vying for seats in Colorado. They're vying for seats in New York. It seems to be the wave of the future. The Democratic Socialists want to take over the Democratic Party. They are, Michael, I mean, if they are consistent altruists and collectivists, they're the most consistent iteration of that party that they could find. So we want the other alternative, folks, the individualists of the world, to also raise their heads and resist this. Not only resist it, but win the day and take over, which would mean giving you your lives back, not claiming that a political elite can run your lives for you or that the people can vote on your rights. No, your life would be sacrosanct and inviolable. Michael, tell us what's going on with the rational alternative.
Okay, so what's going on with the rational alternative is the transition is beginning where I'm going to be doing the interviews that I have been doing for years on the rational egoist, now going to be doing them on the rational alternative. This morning had a great discussion with the inimitable Nikos Soterakopoulos. He actually interviewed me on the inaugural episode of the Rational Alternative podcast. That's out there right now. We talked about building productive habits. Great discussion. Everyone should definitely check that out. Sunday morning, 9 a.m. this week, I'll be doing a special, the members only stuff is normally going to be at 11 a.m. on Sundays, Eastern time. But this week I have something to do. So wait till I tell you what I have to do. You're going to laugh. But what the hell was I just going to say? 9 a.m. Eastern time this week, I'm going to be going over the history and development of capitalism. It's going to be great. Now, can I tell you what I'm actually doing this Sunday? Oh, by the way, like, share, subscribe, super chat, super stickers. We love it all. So during the winter over here, it was very bad. The snow piled up and piled up and piled up. So Diana had to go to work. So me, being the good and attentive boyfriend, I went outside with one of those things that gets the ice and the snow off. And this was such hard work. I mean, this was feet of snow piled up on this car, and I'm dragging it off, freezing my ass off. It's snowing. Plus, I had to shovel the snow out so she can get out. I do all that. I'm so wonderful. Turns out I scratched the hell out of her car because it's a black car.
Oh, yikes.
Yeah. But
I imagine it would have scratched if it were red or white, too, Michael.
I don't think it would be as salient, though.
Okay.
But it turns out they're not actually scratches. They're scuffs. I don't really know the difference, but the guy that I took it to, so I went to see a friend of mine, just an old friend of mine, haven't seen him in like 30 years. I stopped by his house to say hello. He does car work. So I said, you know what? While I'm here, I said, can you take a look at this? What can I do about these scratches? Do I got to repaint the whole car? He says, no, those are just scuffs. I could take care of that for you. So he agreed to do it, but he's got to do it this weekend, Sunday at 11 a.m. So I have to do the show earlier at 9 a.m. Did you share this to X, by the way?
I did. Michael, they do have products that you can buy on Amazon. You just pop it on a rag, a particular rag, and you just rub it over the scuff, and it takes it right out. Takes it right out.
It's cute. It's cute that you think that I would figure that out. You think I'm a boomer when it comes to tech stuff.
Well, I just told you now. So maybe you could say.
Yeah, I don't let you. Okay, so first of all, I don't take your advice any longer. You told me to take the Zycam, and that was a disaster.
I want comments on this. I want the comments I want people in the comments to talk about this. Is Zycam or is not Zycam proven?
First of all, it's Zycam. It's ICAM.
Is it proven or is it not to lessen the severity and duration of a cold? Please comment in the comments and let Michael know that I was not leading him astray.
All right.
It's just that he's peculiar.
Yeah,
he's
so
peculiar.
we have a new member who prays for Satan, which is of course the also inimitable Persephone. Thank you, Persephone, for becoming
who
a
I
new member.
texted
That's
today. I've been
awesome.
thinking about texting her for like a couple of weeks, and I finally was like, I keep forgetting. I keep getting overwhelmed by stuff and just getting busy. And I'm like, how
I
can I
texted
be
her
too
too.
busy?
Now she probably thinks that we had it planned out. No,
No, it
Mark
wasn't
doesn't
planned out,
actually
Persephone.
drive. Mark does not drive. That's not true.
What?
So anyway,
Yes, I
Ian
drive.
Gilmore says it also takes away your sense of smell sometimes. So no, I'm not going to be taking advice from Mark.
No.
He also
Wait a
was
minute,
recommending
Ian.
some weirdo doctor. We're not going with
Wait,
that guy either.
I have to qualify the context here for Ian because he says it takes away the sense of smell sometimes. Not if you're eating the wafers. It's the nasal spray that takes away the sense of smell sometimes, not the wafers, which is what Michael was supposed to be using. And then he had some kind of strange reaction to it, and ever since then he blames me and won't take my doctoral advice.
Not only is Mark not a doctor, but he doesn't even play one on TV. So, but anyway, I'm not going to be taking his car advice. I'm not going to take, of course, I'm not taking his car advice either. I will take his advice on topics though. So what I figured is I sent you some stories and then I sent you some bigger stuff. Why don't we go over a few of the stories?
Well, first I got to talk about something that happened on X today, Michael. As you know, as I preambled in the show, the Democratic Socialists are on the march and they think they are going to seize the day. So some guy named Ted Rall, America's BS detector, that's what he calls himself. He posted on X, "Capitalism failed. Socialism is ascendant. Shut up, losers. Let the adults drive." Now, Michael, I found that a very interesting and ironic post. And here's how I responded to him. I said, how ironic, given the fact that socialists think people are perennial infants and decry a system that promotes rational action and, most importantly, independence and free will. In other words, adult behavior. How interesting, Michael, that they who think we are determined by our economic status and cannot get out of it without the help of the adults, the philosopher kings, is saying that we're the losers. I'm sorry, man. You're the losers. And the world is going to find out. Thank you for that. Is that 100 Czar?
They're Rands. I think they're called Rands.
Rand.
No,
Right.
Rands.
Rands. That's right.
100
I
Rands.
miss you guys so much. I love you, but we miss you too, Persephone. I can't tell you. I love Michael, but it's a little empty without you because when he would bring up your face, to see the expression on your face when I would say something. Or when he would say something. Mostly it's your expression would be flabbergasted when Michael would say something, but occasionally.
Now you're just lying. You're lying and the people know it and the people will not stand for this.
So wait, Michael, so you want me to direct this conversation? If I direct this, all right, let's go over some of the, did you happen to keep the video of JD Vance at all? Do you have that? Can we post it?
No, I don't have the video, but you know what he said. I wanted to go, why don't we, listen, I'm going to show you a little something here. I'm going to teach you how we're going to do this. First, we should go over the actual story. So there's the story about the Iranians and there's the story, because this is in the news, right? And then we have the story about the guy who gets arrested for peeling the pool or whatever. So those stories are kind of standalones. Then we can move on to the J.D. Vance story, because that's a demonstration of our major parties going contrary to liberty. Right? From there, we move on to the Ayn Rand stuff I sent you, because that tells you.
Oh, so you have an idea already in your head. You have it all mapped out the way you want it to go.
It should be easy to do.
But you lied when you wanted me to direct it, because you have this whole thing planned.
No, I just thought that you knew what to do. You're part of the program.
I do.
So I thought you would.
I do.
No, you're going to start way off. You got to get it so it goes right, because then we're going to flow into George Washington.
Is this OCD behavior right now?
No, it's how to format. You when I set up the show in the morning.
No, this
right?
OCD.
I know,
it's OCD.
No. So while you're out there sleeping in Hollywood with your feet up and you got the guy over there catching it when you spit, I'm over here reading and working and planning the show. So first, talk about Iran. Tell us what happened there. Then we'll give a
All right,
quick
folks.
comment on the pool.
All right. So here's the deal with Iran, folks. They created an association of their own criminals that claims to now have jurisdiction over the Straits of Hormuz. Their claim is that anyone who goes through the Straits of Hormuz is going through the sovereign territory of Iran, controlled by Iran. Now, this was not established by international law, nor was it recognized previous to the war. But this is nonetheless the case that the Iranians are pushing now. I shouldn't say the Iranians, but certainly the regime is pushing now, that every boat that goes through the Straits of Hormuz has to be approved by the Iranian thugs, or they will be met with extreme military violence. Or, I guess, Michael, they can bring some form of military violence to unarmed merchant ships. They're certainly not formidable, but they are enough to cause a pain in the ass. They're enough to raise insurance rates to such a degree as to make transport impossible or certainly unfeasible through the straits. And it's a choke point. The Americans, Trump in particular, who denied the necessity of securing the Straits of Hormuz early on in this conflict, are responsible now for giving the Iranians an economic choke point and a negotiating lever unlike nothing else. So, Michael, this is where we stand with them now. Of course, they've threatened military violence against anyone who does not get their approval going through the Straits of Hormuz. What say you?
I say that Robert Naser has given us $10 in a super chat. He says, super busy since OCON 2026, but must take a moment to say thank you to everyone who played even the smallest part, making 10 days in Nolans shine. And we met Nicole, who, as expected, is a sweetheart. Awesome, Robert.
Yeah, she is.
Thank you.
Yeah, she is.
Thank you so much.
Robert.
I think the same as you on this. I just put it in the batch because we have to mention it because it's what's going on in the world. This is a cluster. It's a very screwed up situation over there. But we've also got now this thing with the reflecting pool. So this guy gets arrested, this former Olympian. Now, I've seen the video. It didn't look like he was doing much to me, but I'm not going to rule it out that he actually did rip this thing. They said he ripped off a 2 foot or so piece of the surface. And he faces up to 10 years in prison. And he was indicted, I guess, by a grand jury. But the thing that gets me is I don't believe them. Now, I'm skeptical of government, granted. But I really don't believe them. I really don't believe Trump, and I really don't believe Jeanine Pirro when they're saying what this guy was doing. He was vandalizing. And I don't believe them because, A, Trump is a constant liar, but 2, because his fragile ego needs a scapegoat for why this pool went amok. And because of those 2 reasons, I just don't believe it. I don't believe this guy did what they're saying he did.
And Michael, it's not just because Trump lies all the time, which he does for no reason at all. Even he just lies and exaggerates the truth. But he lied about this. He claimed that somebody went into the middle of the pool in the middle of the night and slashed a 350-foot slice down the pool. I mean, that's an elaborate hoax, Michael, to say something like that, for which there is, up to this point, no evidence to suggest that something like that happened. But here's what we know, Michael. Shortly after the pool was surfaced, I don't know if you knew this, the president wanted to do an inspection tour of the pool. Do you know what he did? He drove the motorcade. He drove the motorcade through the pool. Now, Michael, do you know the Beast? Do you know what the Beast is, right? The Beast is his limousine, and it's like a tank. It weighs like 25,000 pounds. It's like you can't hit it with, you can hit it with a ballistic missile and it would survive. I mean, it's that kind of, that's why they call it the Beast. Now, I can't imagine that a pool that has already had engineering difficulties since its inception in the 1920s, Michael, it's had sinking issues. It's had all kinds of, structural problems. I don't imagine it's designed to have a motorcade of the president's, which probably weighs tens of thousands of pounds, traipsing across it. Now, the idea that might have created some kind of issue, might have compromised structural integrity, doesn't even occur to anybody on on the right. But beyond that, Michael, once the algae started to bloom, which this has apparently been a constant issue with this pool, they poured hydrogen peroxide into the pool, which also compromises the integrity of the surface. And so it started to peel up as a result of that. Of course, I think because Trump bragged so much that he was gonna do this resurfacing job. It was gonna be better than anybody from this time. It was gonna be cheaper than anybody who's ever done it. It's gonna be fantastic. You're gonna see. It's gonna be great. Of course, because it hasn't been, it's been a total fiasco, and it's even been. There's even the Washington parasites have tried to put the kibosh on it. It's now becoming sort of it's a fiasco, and it's becoming, I don't know, sort of I don't want to say it's almost like a moniker for the administration. You know what I mean? It's it's just a perfect image of what this administration is and does, about what they project and what they actually are. What say you?
I say that you're correct, and I don't need to say anything else. So now we can segue into the Reason magazine story I sent you.
Go ahead. Yeah. So let me read this this thing that you sent me from X as well. Vance describes at length how he thinks that, unlike Milton Friedman, the Trump administration's economic ideas allow human dignity to flourish. We talked about this the other day, Michael, about how the left sees dignity very differently than how capitalists and individualists see dignity. They see dignity as material needs and goods being supplied by, they blank out how. They just, if you have things at your beck and call, stuff, then you have dignity. We look at it as something else. Our self-esteem, our dignity are tied to reality. They're tied to what we do. And so we see independence and of the allowance of free will and property, and the allowance of human beings to use their property and dispose of it as they see fit, to combine elements in their property as I don't know, as the proper elements that one needs in order to feel good about himself and the world. That's dignity, Michael. The dignity is in your capacity to think freely and act freely, and to succeed based on those actions. That's what we think lends itself to dignity. What about you?
Well, of course. I mean, the thing that irks me most about this stuff is that they claim out of one side of their mouths that they're fighting socialism. And then on the other side, they're talking about buying stakes in private companies, price gouging, yada, yada. And then you have J.D. Vance, who, is a good chance of being president, coming out and saying that Donald Trump's economic policies, meaning tariffs, jawboning, trying to get interest rates driven down to artificially boost the economy, this is the type of stuff that's going to build dignity in human beings, not free enterprise. Now, I know a lot of people, they like to criticize Milton Friedman. I have my own criticisms of him as well. But when it comes to public intellectuals, he was about as good as it's been, in the last 30, 40, 50 years. And he's certainly a hell of a lot better than Donald Trump.
Oh, my God. Look, Michael, Milton Friedman was asked if he could be dictator for a day, and then they proceeded to try to, throw some ideas out there, if he would enact these ideas. The first thing out of his mouth, Michael, was, I would never be a dictator for a day. I wouldn't do it. Michael, that in itself qualified him to be president of the United States. And you contrast that with what Trump said when asked if he would be dictator. Well, I would, and he went on to talk about what he would do. He happily accepted that. And of course, this is going to contrast greatly with probably the greatest president that ever lived, who we're going to talk about later on. But Michael, I wanted to get to what this guy, J.D. Vance, said, which disturbed me even more. I'm sure it'll disturb objectivists or any thinking person out there. He said Milton Friedman's ideas made more sense in the 80s because America had Christian guardrails. So liberty, economic liberty, political freedom, it's good provided you have the moral sense that you need to crush yourself, the moral sense that you are a sacrificial entity to society, the moral sense, in other words, that is embodied in secular socialism.
Right.
So, I mean, this is absurd, man. There's now no clear difference between the left and the right, essentially, on essential matters.
Well, obviously, I mean, what he's saying is that given that the people aren't good enough to be free, the government has to make them do things. And yeah, it's grotesque. It's disgusting. And, look, I hate that. I hate that I just said look, because I hate when people say look. But look, Ayn Rand in the To All Innocent Fifth columnist open letter that she wrote, she talked about, the people who think that it can't happen here, that we have totalitarianism. And I think that really what we've had is a long walk, slow walk towards authoritarian government. What Alexis de Tocqueville called soft despotism. And I think that it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And it's like, the proverbial frog boiling that doesn't recognize it. And I think that gets to the urgency that Nikos Soterakopoulos wrote about the other day, and the eternal vigilance that Thomas Jefferson spoke of when he said that eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. Had you ever seen this before? The Ayn Rand article I sent you this morning?
I hadn't, and Michael, it was like, I hate to be sort of a dissenting voice here, but it sort of reminded me of Titus Andronicus, the play by Shakespeare. There's a couple plays out there that just don't read like Shakespeare, right? And this one just didn't read to me like Rand. I know it is. Okay, but there was a part of me that's like, this is just a different style. It wasn't as pristine as some of her other work. It's of course timely today as it was back then, even more timely now. But still, it bothered me. There's something about the style bothered me. I just had to put that out there.
I think what bothered you, I'm going to tell you what bothered you, because I know more than you know. I know more.
You know
than
more
anybody.
about me.
Yeah,
you know more about me than I know.
She does refer to faith quite a bit. We need a faith, our faith, the faith, a faith in freedom, that sort of thing. This was written when? In, I think, 1941, I want to say.
Wow. Yeah. So she's sort of finding her style then.
So you're talking about let me find it here. I want to.
This is just noting the march of communism and fascism in the world.
Okay.
And
this is written, just so you know, Mark, before Pearl Harbor.
That's amazing. That's great.
So this is written before Pearl Harbor. It's written before she published The Fountainhead, certainly before Atlas Shrugged. She's not a fully developed philosopher, and she's writing to a general audience about the urge to combat collectivism and totalitarianism. And this I love. You who read this represent the greatest danger to America. That's the opening.
Wow.
And she says, totalitarianism has already won a complete victory in many American minds and conquered all of our intellectual life. You have helped it to win. And she goes on to say, she says, check this for yourself. Take this test. And I love this, right? 1, are you the kind who considers 10 minutes of his time too valuable to read this and give it some thought? Are you the kind who sits at home and moans over the state of the world but does nothing about it? Are you the kind who says that the future is predestined by something or other, something he can't quite name or explain and isn't very clear about, but the world is doomed to dictatorship and there's nothing anyone can do about it? Are you the kind who says that he wishes he can do something, he'd be so eager to do something, but what can one man do? Are you the kind who are so devoted to your own career, your family, your home, or your children that you will let the most unspeakable horrors be brought about to destroy your career, your family, your home, and your children because you were too busy now to prevent them? Which one of the above are you? A little of all? But are you really too busy to think? The point that I'm getting here is that people don't have the sense of urgency. And I've come across this a lot. There's 2 things really that are embedded in that. One, people don't have the sense of urgency. They have other things to do. And it's like, yeah, that's not that important. I have, this or that. The other, the other is this idea, well, nobody can do anything, nothing, nobody, this can't be done. And in response to the no, nothing can be done or only a few people, she points out that the Bolsheviks started with
Oh,
18.
can I read that?
Yes, you can.
I want to read that exactly, Michael, because it just brings, my little advertisement to mind. I said we are having our national convention on September 19th and 20th. It's not going to be huge, guys, but the people who will be there will be passionate about liberty. And it doesn't have to be huge in order for it to make an impact. But I want you to be there. If you think liberty is important, and liberty is on the chopping block now as we speak, it is more popular to be a collectivist than an individualist. You should show up to this meeting. You should help us affect legislation across the country and start shifting the premises of this country from collectivism to individualism. Here's what she said, which I think it was very inspiring, Michael, although it's, of course, talking about some very dark movements. You say, what can one man do? When the communists came to power in Russia, they were a handful of 18 men, just 18, in a country of 170 million population. They were laughed at and no one took them seriously. According to their own prophet, Karl Marx, Russia was the last country in which communism could be historically possible because of Russia's backwardness in industrial development. Yet they succeeded because they knew what they wanted and went after it. Historical destiny or no historical destiny. Adolf Hitler started the Nazi Party in Germany with 7 men. He was laughed at and considered a harmless crank. People said that after the Versailles Treaty, Germany could never possibly become a world power again, not for centuries. And yet Hitler succeeded because he knew what he wanted and went after it. History or no history? Shall we believe in mystical fates or do something about the future? Amen. Ayn Rand once again nails it on the frickin' head.
So, yes, and I would also just mention, think about the founding fathers and think about the impact of Tom Paine, who we've talked about, in writing Common Sense. Think about the impact we're going to be discussing of George Washington. Dr. Stanton Samanow wrote to me when I was in prison about my own personal change, that complacency is my enemy. And I think complacency is also the enemy of freedom, the enemy of civilization. If we just sit back and think that things are going to be okay and don't do anything to make sure they're okay, then we are to blame. If we just sit back and say there's nothing that we can do, we are also to blame. Jim says not to be a Debbie Downer, but they had the cultural wind in their sails. That's true, but the cultural wind didn't just arise like Athena from the head of Zeus. It comes about because people work for it. And so that's
I don't necessarily think they were primed for Bolshevism. I think those men were passionate enough and worked to corrupt the society also, Michael, from within. So they did a lot of passionate work beforehand to prime the society for what they were about to do. But we must all act, folks, and part of that action could be coming to the National Convention, making your voice heard before the water starts boiling. I mean, it's close. We're close to that, Michael. We're very close.
How about this, Mark? What price your smug self-confidence in the face of millions of foreign money and foreign agents pouring into our country, in the face of one step after another by which our country is moving closer to totalitarianism? You do nothing except say, it can't happen here. Do you hear the totalitarians answer you? Oh, yeah? Don't delude yourself with slogans and meaningless historical generalizations. It can happen here. It can happen anywhere. And a country's past history has nothing to do with it. Totalitarianism is not a new product of historical evolution. It is older than history. It is the attempt of the worthless and the criminal to seize control of society. That element is always there in any country, but a healthy society gives it no chance. It is when the majority in a country becomes weak, indifferent, and confused that a criminal minority, beautifully organized like all gangs, seizes the power. And once that power is seized, it cannot be taken back for generations. Fantastic as it may seem to think of a dictatorship in the United States, it is much easier to establish such a dictatorship than to overthrow it. With modern technique and modern weapons at its disposal, a ruthless minority can hold millions in slavery indefinitely. What can 1,000 unorganized, unarmed men do against one man with a machine gun? And then she says this: there is no personal neutrality in the world today.
I love that. There is no personal neutrality in the world today. That's very important, folks. You are either, by your inaction, promoting the other side, or you're resisting it and standing for liberty. There's no in between, man. We are at that place. And Rand understood that, 70 years ago or more.
So she then says this, and I absolutely love this, Mark. This is straight into my veins with this. If you accept the totalitarian idea, if the word state or collective are sacred to you, but the word individual is not, stop right here. You don't have to read further. What we have to say is not for you and you are not for us. Let's part here. But be honest. Admit that you were a totalitarian and go join the Communist Party or the German-American Bund, because they are the logical end of the road you have chosen, and you will end up with one or the other, whether you know it or not. So one of the things that irks the hell out of me is people who pretend to be constitutionalists, people who pretend to support individual rights, people who say they're fighting for capitalism, but yet think that Donald Trump is promoting capitalism, support tariffs, price controls, that sort of thing. So I just wish that people would just say, okay, I'm not for freedom. I'm not for capitalism. This is what I'm for. Okay, fine. We can argue it out, but don't pretend you're on my side, because you're not.
Michael, this is scary. Look, I want to read a little bit of this article that you sent me from The Independent about recapturing the spirit of '76. I think it'll be an interesting segue into one of the greatest heroes of art of all time. But I also want to contrast it with something today, because I was alive in 1970. Were you alive in 1976?
In 76?
Yeah.
I was born. I was born exactly 1 month to the day after the 200th anniversary of the country.
That's great.
So, yeah.
I remember.
I was going to say something. Now I forgot what it was. But yeah, segue. Oh, I forgot. Today's open questions. It's Friday too, by the way. And you've ignored the audience. You didn't tell them they could ask questions.
I've that was written almost 90 years ago. Wow. Today we have to compromise because, yeah. So, yeah, let me talk about a little.
Wait a second. Whoa.
What?
You didn't read the whole thing that Akira wrote.
Because today we have to compromise because we hate Iran.
Yeah.
Does he mean Ayn Rand? I mean, what is it? I don't.
No, he's talking about people who have compromised on the Constitution and our founding principles because they hate Iran.
Oh, I see. Yeah,
that's what he's talking about.
Well, thank you for making that clear to me, because to me it was just a non sequitur. But Michael, today,
are you okay?
I'm fine, I think. Today, when they poll young folks, Gen Zers and millennials, 68% of them have a favorable impression of socialism. And 50+% of them would like to see a socialist in high office, like even the presidency of the United States. Now, we know that AOC is a contender for 2028. She's backed by one of the most popular politicians in our nation, which is Bernie Sanders, unfortunately. So this doesn't bode well for the United States, but I want to contrast this with the state of things in 1976. In 1976, at least 90% of Americans graduating from high school wore their cap and gown, some bicentennial symbol. Meanwhile, the bicentennial wagon train pilgrimage took 7 different routes, beginning in Washington State, Texas, Minnesota, and other locations to converge on Valley Forge, Pennsylvania. Along the way, it collected rededication scrolls with the signatures of 22 million people. That's more than 1 in 10 Americans, committing themselves to reaffirming American founding principles. Quote, to commemorate this nation's bicentennial, we hereby dedicate ourselves anew to the precepts of our founding fathers. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Michael, 2 million people came to Philadelphia for a 5-hour parade and to hear President Gerald Ford state that it's good to know that in our own lifetime we have taken part in the growth of freedom and in the expansion of equality, which began here so long ago. Now, Michael, we have somewhere in the neighborhood of a third of the country that despises it at its roots. We have a huge swath of the Democratic Party who people running for office right now who claim they would wash and wipe their dirty hands on the American flag. They hate the concept of Americanism. They're anathema to it. Mamdani won saying, let's give up this frigid individualism for the warmth of collectivism. He's one of those guys that couldn't read Rand's essay any further than that moment. And Michael, I want to reaffirm the principles of 1776 this year when we need them most to remind people what it means to have your life, liberty, and the capacity to pursue your happiness. That is what lends itself to your dignity and self-esteem. The thing that the collectivists want is your death. It's an ideology of death. Go ahead, Michael.
Yes, indeed. Returning to the principles of 1776, I can tell you what those principles aren't. They're not making up lies about a reflecting pool. They're not starting unconstitutional wars and not having the balls to even finish them. They certainly are not denigrating capitalism and saying that dignity requires a state-run economy. They are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, personal responsibility. And another theme of today's show, I think, is that we can do things, right? If we have a sense of urgency, we can accomplish things. And there was a guy a few hundred years ago who was a gentleman planter. As a young man, he didn't have a formal education very much. Didn't strike anybody as overly intelligent, but he had strong character. That guy served in the British Army in the French and Indian War, or the 7 Years' War in Europe. But he started to become fed up with some things. He started to become fed up with the fact that as an American in the military, he was, they were passed over for promotions, I believe. They weren't paid as much as the British. This upset him. When they started taxing Americans, that upset him. So he ended up being a delegate to the Continental Congresses. He further was the president of the Constitutional Convention later on, first president of the United States, set a lot of the examples of what a president should be, wouldn't shake hands with people because of the appearance of impropriety when he was president. This guy left after 2 terms in office. He refused a commission from the military. He turned over to civilian authority the power. He also said at the beginning, I will raise enough men at my own expense. He didn't take a salary. George Washington, without George Washington, without that one guy, it's hard to see how we would even have a country. And by the way, George Washington lost more battles than he won in the Revolutionary War. Lost more than he won. George Washington had to deal with people conspiring to try to get him relieved of his duty. George Washington had to deal with starving troops that he had to motivate, freezing cold troops. But yet he did it. He ultimately prevailed. And we are here celebrating the 250th anniversary of the country that would not be here were it not for him. What do you have to say about Mr. Washington, Mark?
Well, he's my favorite president, of course. I don't think there's ever been a president like him. Look, he gave up power twice. He was the commander in chief of the Continental Army in a time when anyone who gained control of the armed forces immediately used them to seize the power of the state and became a dictator. He, however, emulated the great farmer Cincinnatus, who, when called to war, beat his plowshares into swords, fought the war, won the war, came back and became a farmer again. That was the idol of Washington, and he emulated that in his own action. He gave up his commission before the Congress to applause, to standing ovation, and to the gratitude of a nation. We don't quite understand that today, what kind of gesture that was. Furthermore, Michael, when we were forming the Republic, there was talk amongst the people who are not necessarily all against monarchy, that a man like Washington should become the king of America. I mean, during the Constitutional Convention, there was debate about how long the duration of the presidency should be. Some thought it should be an appointment for life. There was a great deal of controversy about it. Of course, Washington bowed out after 2 terms, and that became a precedent until, of course, a Democrat by the name of Franklin Delano Roosevelt broke with that. But when he voluntarily ceded power again, George III looked at him from across the pond and said, if he actually does cede power, he's the greatest man in history. And of course, he did. Also, quite unusual for that time. And as we're starting to discover now with Trump attempting to lay the groundwork for a 3rd term, not so unusual today. The right kind of megalomaniac, grandiosity, the right kind of malignant narcissist in office can be very scary, which is why we have a constitution to protect us from those people, folks, which is why we should stick to the letter of the Constitution and give those people as little power as possible. Also, Michael, something that was extraordinary during his tenure as the commander-in-chief of the armed forces is how much he ceded to the representatives of the people. He always went to Congress for what he needed. He felt, and it was this concept that eventually prevailed later on in the formation of the Republic, that the people should be in charge of the army. It should be a people's army. It shouldn't be something that the elites run. These are precedents that were they're so profound in the way in which they promoted Republican principles and maintained the liberty of the people of America. I can't imagine America existing without somebody like him doing that.
I don't think it could. I don't. I think that integrity can accomplish. Jesus in the Bible says faith can move mountains. I think integrity is far more powerful. There's something about a person of integrity that motivates people, inspires awe, inspires fear even at times. And I think that Washington, willing to suffer with his troops, when he said goodbye to the troops at Francis Tavern in New York City, I was able to go there about a year ago, maybe even, was it 2 years ago? I don't know. But I was able to go there. And what an experience. I mean, you're just in there and it's just, you're bathing in history. You used the word grateful the other day to describe your thoughts about being an American rather than proud to be an American. And I think that, yes, I am very grateful that a man such as Washington lived.
As am I. There's a reason that the monument and his monument and Lincoln's monument stand opposite to each other. They were responsible for holding the Republic together. Of course, we can look at Lincoln's presidency in a bit more jaundiced eye than Washington, who was forming the presidency and the powers of the presidency. Michael, he was able to balance republicanism with a kind of majesty and stature. People have to remember that when the United States was born, they were surrounded by enemies. The French in the south and the Spanish were in the south. The British still maintained areas in the frontier and still agitated native restlessness and warfare up against people on the frontier. The British were still seizing our ships and commandeering our sailors. So there were tons of aggressions against us. And we weren't taken very seriously by the European powers. And so Washington had to navigate that territory where we at once had stature with the European community, which meant the office of the presidency had to have a grand facade. It had to be something big enough to make the European powers respect it. And he brought that majesty to it. Now, some of it was with respect to his integrity, but some of it was with respect to the rituals that he established, Michael. And at the same time, he had to present a Republican air, which was he's not above the people. He's a representative of the people. He is serving the people, unlike any European aristocrat. And that was a very fine line for him to walk, Michael, but he did it. He did it. And this is one of the things that gets me most. Of course, he wasn't the smartest founder. He wasn't the smartest guy in the room. This was a generation of giants, of men who knew history like no other generation, I think, before or since. But he was one of the shrewdest. He was one of the clearest. He had principles, solid principles at his beck and call, Michael, and he didn't waver from them. And that made him great. He had great executive power. I mean, he did run his plantation very well. He was the only founding father who was able to free his slaves because he was prosperous enough to do so. The other founders were in debt and had other issues that prohibited them from actually doing what he did. But Michael, his shrewdness, his statesmanship, his capacity to bring dignity to the office, Michael, it's almost as if his photo-negative opposite were in office right now.
So he, I just want to put sort of a ribbon on this. What didn't he do, right? He didn't say it can't happen here. He didn't say my life is good enough. I don't need to fight for this. He didn't say what can one man do. No, he said somebody needs to do it. I can be that man and I will be that man. And he got it done. And again, we all should be very grateful to General Washington.
I think on July 4th, everybody should thank whoever it is you think you need to throw this sentiment out there to the universe, but certainly thank your being, the fact that you're here right now, alive and relatively prosperous, considering all the obstacles that are put in front of us. Thank the men like Washington, like Samuel Adams, like John Adams, like Thomas Jefferson, like John Hancock, the signers of the Declaration. These 56 men put their lives in sacred honor on the line so that they could bequeath to us the greatest gift that has ever been given to civilization, and that is liberty, the heart of civilization, the very thing that is now on the chopping block, guys.
So before we wrap up, and if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask. I just want to read the closing paragraph of the Declaration of Independence. We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America in General Congress assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do, and for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, We mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. And indeed, they put their lives on the line. Ian Gilmore says, are you going to see Young Washington? I didn't even know it was a thing.
I didn't know it was a thing either, and I'll see it. I hope it's good. I hope it's not a smear campaign, because that would suck.
Yes, it would. It would piss me right off.
You know what I think I'm going to do at some point tonight, Michael? I think I'm going to do a little book recording type thing. I'm going to record the opening salvo of the Declaration of Independence before we hit the charges against the king, because I think people need to reaffirm those values, and I think I'm going to post that, put it out there. I'll send it to you, see what you can do with it.
Why don't we put it on this channel instead of you just randomly posting it?
Well, I'll give it to you, and you can put it on the channel.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay, good.
Doesn't that make more sense?
I don't know.
What do you mean you don't know?
I don't know. Well, I never mind.
What were you going to say?
I just thought if I
want
posted
the audience.
I just thought if I posted it on, X or on Instagram or something. I have a rather large following. It's somewhat apolitical though, and I feel like the redheaded stepchild of the supernatural fandom. But I thought there would be slightly more people who would at least pick it up and listen to it than for our show. But I'm good with putting it on the channel and bringing people to the channel.
Yeah, you can actually post the clips from the channel.
Good. Okay, let's do that.
You know what I mean? So I asked yesterday about remakes, if there's any remakes that are better than the original. Zardo Sis says, can't think of a single remake that is better than the original except Mars Attacks, if you consider it a remake of the entire Attack from Outer Space genre. Ian Gilmore says The Thing, 1982, remaking The Thing
way better.
from Another World, 1951.
Way better.
And also he says The Maltese Falcon with Bogart, remaking the 1931 version.
Yes, I think there's even a version in the 70s with Mitchum that it doesn't work for me. Wasn't very good. Michael, but what about Godfather 2, for crying out loud?
Come on, dude.
Godfather 2.
Godfather. It's not better than Godfather 1.
It's
a great movie. It's a great movie. It's not better than Godfather 1. Don't start. What do you mean?
What about The Empire Strikes Back? I mean that sequel. That's weird.
That's not a remake. It's a sequel.
But still, Godfather.
And so
2
is Matter of fact. So is Godfather 2. What are you talking about?
Yeah, never mind.
You're getting everybody wound up now.
Yeah, never mind.
And you're the actor. You're supposed to be the expert.
I know. I am the expert, but I went in a different direction.
And now, what do you mean a different direction? You went the wrong direction.
That's a different direction. The wrong direction is still a direction. It's just a different one. Hey, you going to give the capitalist thought for the day?
No, you are. I did it yesterday.
What? Oh yeah,
I did it yesterday, didn't I?
No, you gave the thought. You gave the question, didn't you?
All right, I'll give the capitalist thought of the day. You give the question. How about that?
Go ahead.
Folks, tomorrow is the 4th of July. It's the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. And while you are out rightly celebrating and having a good time with your family and friends, perhaps having a beer, some hot dogs, and whatever else you're going to do, enjoy yourself, yes. But please recount the men who made this possible, the people who sacrificed, who put forth the effort, who did the reading, the studying to get the ideas out there, the men who risked their lives in war and lost it, the men who suffered and died, starved, froze, in the character of men like George Washington. And remember that in many ways we are losing what they started, and it is up to us, as Ben Franklin said, to keep it. Just keep that in mind. Go ahead, Mark. Ask them a question.
I want to know if you guys think the Republic will survive the next 10 years. Do you think the Republic will survive the next 10 years? I mean, from the time Rand wrote that broadside before Pearl Harbor, she foresaw some movements in the United States that are now institutionalized. So I'd be interested to know what you think about that. So please remember to write your answer in YouTube. Remember to like and subscribe to this channel, because these ideas need to be dominant in our culture, man. They need to be not fringe anymore. Objectivism, reason, self-interest, pride, the virtue of honesty, integrity, capitalism. These are the things that our culture needs to be focused on in the future, not collectivism, not determinism, not the seizure of power and the subordination of some folks for the benefit of others. That is not the kind of society we want. So please promote this channel as much as you can. Please remember to go to AmericanCapitalistParty.org and subscribe to our movement, and remember to come to our national convention on the 19th and 20th in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Michael, do you have any parting shots before I give our send-off?
Just remember that I got a great episode on this channel, podcast interview right now with the wonderful Nikos Soterakopoulos. And if you're joining us from X, the YouTube channel is The Rational Alternative. The flagship show is this one. Every weekday, noon Eastern time, the Capitalist Corner. Thank you. Take it out, and happy 4th of July, folks.
Happy 4th, guys. I want you to remember our founders. Let's go back to those great principles and progress them forward with reason. So check your premises, guys, because you're gonna need to do that if you want to carry forward this idea that we should be free for all time. Check your premises. Peace.